So we talked to journalists from as far north as Medford, Oregon, and as far south as Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the most interesting thing that we found in those interviews was that their most pressing, their most engaging, and their most creative stories about community issues didn't come from readily made press releases and weren't served to them on a silver platter. They came from passing moments with it where a concerned mother or a concerned citizen approached them about that idea and talked to them about it and made that connection for them. We at Surf see that problem of luck as an amazing opportunity to increase the volume and frequency of those events to build amazing stories. So then what is Surf exactly? Surf, it's a software that can be bought on a monthly basis by different news organizations that also has a mobile app to conveniently engage their news consumers. So then how are we engaging these news consumers? We're engaging them through surveys that are delivered every single day, where just by filling out that survey, you're given one ticket to enter in for a raffle for a local prize. Now that prize space, I'll talk about that in a quick sec. Those responses are actually going to be analyzed using natural language processing to analyze for keywords, key terms, sentiment, and make those connections that might not be readily made. And then back to that prize space, that's going to be sold as advertising space as an additional stream of revenue for news organizations. And we're going to do all of this to facilitate a conversation and engage the community. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our development team to walk you through Surf.
So I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of what it would look like for a journalist in the newsroom to use Surf. So meet Humera. Humera is a journalist who works for reporting at the Kansas City Star. So one day she gets to work and she gets onto her Kansas City Star Surf account. She can then view the dashboard, which shows all the information from the data that they've recently accumulated through surveys to their readers. Through this, she can see certain trends in different topics. So she looks at some of the keywords that have been trending recently and sees that there's been a lot of interest surrounding the term orphanage. Being curious as to why this is, she decides to click on the term, which takes her to a page that shows more detailed information on that term and how it's been coming up according to the readers. So she sees that one of the terms that's often come up in association with orphanage is this term congestion, along with some other ones, but congestion really catches her eye. So she decides to filter the specific responses that they've gathered from users to ones that include both orphanage and congestion. Through looking at some of these responses, she sees that there's been an issue recently by which orphanages have been too full. They've been getting too congested and are having a hard time providing for all of the children. So she feels like she has kind of the beginnings of a story, but she still needs to figure out how it better pertains to her community or what they might want to hear about it. To do this, she decides to pose a question through Surf. She goes back to the dashboard and goes into the field that she can then enter a question on. So she enters a question asking people to indicate whether they've ever been interested in adoption, or if they've ever adopted, or if they've never been interested, and then to explain why. Over the course of the day, various journalists in the newsroom submit their own questions, but by the end of the day it's decided that Humera's is the most interesting and relevant, so it's the one that they decide to go with. The next day, this question is released, making it available to people who have subscribed to the Kansas City Star on their Surf app. These people can then fill out the questions, and then at the end of the day, Surf will gather their responses, analyze the data, and make it available to the journalists at the Star. So at this point, Humera gets back on and sees the results to her survey. She notices that many people indicated that they have never adopted and aren't interested in doing so, which doesn't surprise her. But she is surprised by how many people said that they were interested in adoption but hadn't done so. Considering how there's this problem with congestion and people aren't adopting enough in the state of Missouri, she was wondering how this many people can think that they want to adopt but not do it, and so she wants to know more. She clicks on this so that she can then see what these people think. So she then sees a list of keywords that come up in these people's responses and some of the responses that are associated with people who gave this answer. Looking through the keywords, she sees same-sex, and she wonders what that has to do with the situation. Clicking on that, she can then further filter the responses on the left side of the screen to ones where the users both indicated that they are interested in adoption but hadn't done so, and whose responses included something about the topic of same-sex. She then sees through looking at these answers that a lot of same-sex couples appear to be having trouble adopting children. So she wants to know a little bit more about this and decides to get in touch with some of these users. Some of them have opted to keep their contact information private, and so she can send them a request through the Surf app to get their contact information. Once she does this, the user sees a notification that looks like this, and they can either approve or deny that request. So some of them approve her request, and she is then granted their name, email, phone number, or whatever contact information they've decided to provide. After getting in touch with some of these people, Humera finds out that there are a lot of policies in place in the state of Missouri that make it difficult for same-sex couples to adopt, and some orphanages completely refuse to work with same-sex couples at all. Seeing that there's this problem with congestion in orphanages and also this problem where a large portion of people aren't being allowed to adopt children, Humera now feels like she has her story. So now that I've covered how a journalist might interact with SURF, I'd like to transition into how the news consumer will interact with it. Their primary means of working with SURF is through the mobile application. So the user will log in to their SURF account, and then they will be able to answer questions that have been posted by the newsroom that they're subscribed to. So in this example, the user is subscribed to the Kansas City Star. So they're able to see the questions that the Star has posted for this day. You'll see that the first two questions listed on this screen are the ones that Humera posed in the example I just went through. The third question is a more general question. It asks if there's anything that the user would like to point out to the newsrooms or bring to their attention. This question is, over time, used to gauge what topics are trending and what topics people seem to be interested in from a more zoomed out perspective. Once the users finish filling out the survey, they're presented with 5 different responses from other users that were submitted as responses to that last general open-ended question over the past week or so. The user is then prompted to indicate which of these they think is the most interesting, which covers a topic they'd be the most interested in hearing more about. After they've done this, they've filled out all their questions for the day and they are awarded 1 ticket. They are then brought to a screen that shows them what the prize for this week is, and they can then enter tickets for a raffle to win that prize. So in this example, the Kansas City Star has made a deal with Jack Stack Barbecue, where Jack Stack has donated 2 $25 gift cards as the prize for this week's raffle. Now that I've kind of covered how a journalist and a news consumer can work with SURF, I'd like to hand it over to Lydia to discuss some of the technical aspects that help SURF better serve journalists.
SURF uses Google's cloud natural language processing to identify the key terms in each user's response. We then sort the responses into different categories based on the most important term as identified by the natural language processing. The responses shown to users to vote on are drawn from different categories, and within those categories, different sentiment to ensure equal representation. For example, perhaps many responses include the key term gun. Our method ensures that maybe some positive things about guns will show up and maybe some negative things about guns will show up in the voting. And perhaps many responses include guns and only a few responses include orphanages. Our method ensures that orphanages, even if the community wasn't aware that this was an issue previously, would have opportunity to be voted on by the users. So these terms will be brought to the journalist's attention on the dashboard, but we will also provide data on which terms show up most frequently in responses completely separate from the voting process. Let's talk about what we've learned about SURF so far. We've learned that SURF is a tool that helps journalists and consumers work together to surface stories, and this is done by using rewarded surveys and natural language processing to encourage a question-response cycle that mimics that luck, chance, coming across conversation between the journalist and the consumer. And all the while, we are providing a new advertisement space for newsrooms to sell to create new revenue. So now that I've talked about what's happening behind the scenes, and Chris has shown you what the journalists see and the consumers see, let's hand it over to Mike and Millie to talk about the business side.
So getting into the business side of SURF, we're going to be looking at the market opportunity this app presents. As we mentioned, SURF is really a tool for newsrooms. So our main target audience is the news media newsrooms. And when we were interviewing newsrooms in our research phase, we kept talking to them and they said one of the main pain points of their job was finding these stories that really come from the community and being out there and talking to them. Because some newsrooms might not just be able to have people out and about 24/7 all the time. And so we feel like SURF provides this way for them to communicate with the community on a more consistent basis. Furthermore, digital ad revenue spending has increased in the past few years, and for the first time has actually surpassed traditional ad spending. So companies understand that eyeballs are going online. So we feel like this presents a way to really tap into that potential ad revenue and really provide a way for newsrooms to make a new revenue stream. On the consumer side, consumers are interested in news. 85% of consumers find it somewhat important to keep up with news on a daily basis. However, how they're consuming their news is changing. 70% of them prefer to consume their news on mobile over desktop. And we feel like Surf is able to provide this mobile way for them to consume and interact with their news. We're bringing it to them. We're not making them go out and find it. We're giving them a convenient way to connect with their newsrooms. And we feel like Surf is able to occupy this space that's not really being tapped to its full potential.
So then as far as what journalistic space Surf occupies, as you can see on the chart behind me, in the user experience, there is no pre-publication involvement in news. So that fact gathering, quote gathering, sourcing of story ideas, the user just isn't involved in that phase. We think Surf really meets that untapped potential and fulfills it really well by engaging consumers, by involving them in that news gathering process, and by allowing those great stories to come from the ground up.
Looking at the competition of Surf, one of the main competitors is GroundSource, which is an application that connects the consumer, the newsreader, with a journalist via SMS. So they're able to text a specific number for a journalist if they have a concern or if there's an ongoing event in their community. On the journalism side, you have a well-known tool in the newsroom called Harken, and it really works with newsrooms to help improve their audience participation and audience engagement through their consulting services as well as their dashboard management system. But Harken's a really back-end tool. The consumer, the newsreader, won't really see Harken or the Harken name out in public. They more see the byproduct of Harken. If we look at the indirect competitors, really Surf is facing any survey creation platform, but they're really bare bones. They just help you make the survey. They don't do the data analyzing for you. They don't help you get it out there. They just make it for you. And then you also have the applications that reward consumers for answering questions, such as Google Rewards. However, these are very basic questions. They're more just gathering data on the user, not necessarily trying to get their input, and it's not really localized either. But they have great success, and users are willing to use these kind of reward systems. Answering a few questions gets a few dollars. They're really willing to actually put their time to that.
So then what makes Surf different? We really see it breaking out into three different things. First of all, it's that community engagement aspect. By being able to engage with that news consumer in those local areas on the ground level, we think it's a really useful tool in finding those story ideas. Second is going to be that natural language processing element to it. There is no journalism space, there is no journalistic app or application that uses natural language processing in this way, and we think that's a huge advantage for Surf. And then finally, that added source of revenue. By being able to sell that prize space for a premium is a huge bonus to newsrooms and something that can really improve their bottom line. And then the business model, we're going to take a 25% commission on that prize space and then charge a $150 monthly subscription to use the Surf technology. And then with these numbers, we see Surf being profitable after getting 8 newsrooms with 10 different advertising spaces included in that. So that really, if you break it down, comes down to all the major newsrooms here in the state of Missouri. So with that, Surf can not only turn a profit very quickly, but can also turn a profit for the long term.
As we mentioned, Surf is all about getting into the newsrooms. So our main marketing strategy is really creating these partnerships with the newsroom through personal selling, getting in there, giving hands-on demos, showing how it can help enhance their story finding process. Furthermore, we'll be launching a social media campaign to really reach journalists outside our network and across America and really show them and get the name out about Surf. Furthermore, each community is different and unique, so we'll work with the newsrooms to customize Surf to their needs so they can really best pull out the information from their community. Along with that, we'll assist with the newsrooms with marketing the Surf application to their newsreaders. So day one, when we're launching Surf, they're able to have readers already ready to make those surveys. And so really, we'll really be employing our marketing strategy in the first 6 months of Surf. At the same time, we'll be developing the application. And with these partnerships, we hope to be getting their input on how to best fine-tune Surf, and so it really works to their needs. So right out the gate, they're ready to start collecting the survey information.
So then what does the future of Surf looks like? It looks like more survey tools and different ways to engage those news consumers. We'd also love to implement voice integration. So Alexa in the morning being able to deliver your survey through her voice system and then being able to give those responses back in real time. Even beyond that, we see this going way outside the realms of journalism and being able to apply it to different corporations and companies looking to talk to their end consumers and mine those impactful insights. Beyond that, leaderboards so that we can engage news consumers and engage those who are very committed to this community and reward them for doing that. Also, question suggestions and being able to use that natural language processing to suggest different questions to ask to, again, mine those really impactful stories. And then finally, we'd love to see comments as well so users can give their feedback in real time, talk about the survey in that space. So then who are we? We're Mindflow. We're a team of computer science, business, and journalism students who want to solve the media problems of tomorrow. I myself have a background in both journalism and advertising, so very well versed in the space and would be able to develop those partnerships with news organizations and get Surf into the world very quickly. Millie's an international business major, so she has experience in not only the US market, but in global markets and could take Surf international. And then these wonderful people right here, Chris, Lydia, and Evan, are our wonderful computer science students. They have experience in the artificial intelligence space and have provided solutions in the past to these kinds of problems. So with that, we hope you guys are going to surface the stories of tomorrow with us. Thank you so much.